Welcome to Paranormal, where the shadows whisper and true stories blur the line between reality and nightmare. Every encounter shared here is real and far more disturbing than fiction. Dare to listen?
The uploader first heard this story from a close friend, someone who, for a period of their life, lived with a kind of spiritual sensitivity so intense it shaped their entire reality. The friend insists that it's gone now, that decades have passed without a single glimpse or sensation of anything supernatural. But for those years, the world they inhabited was different, fractured by a thin, trembling veil between the living and the dead. When the uploader listened, they could tell this wasn't just a tale told for entertainment or shock. It was something far heavier, a burden the friend carried quietly, a truth they never wanted to share widely, but felt compelled to pass on nonetheless. It all began in elementary school. At first, the signs were subtle, almost dismissible. The friends' nights were restless. Sleep didn't come as a refuge, but as a battlefield. Almost every night, the same torment awaited: sleep paralysis. For those unfamiliar, sleep paralysis is a strange and terrifying state. It's that liminal moment when your mind is awake, but your body refuses to move. You lie trapped beneath an invisible weight, your limbs numb, your chest pressed down as though by an unseen force. No matter how desperately you will it, your arms, legs, even your voice betray you. The friend described it as a creeping pressure, suffocating in its relentlessness, like the room itself was collapsing inwards. And then when they finally dared to open their eyes, the nightmare would appear. Sitting quietly at the edge of the bed was an old woman. Her hair was a wild mess of tangled white strands, uneven and unkempt, as if no brush had touched it in years. Her mouth hung open, but there was no breath escaping her lips. Inside that gaping maw was pure darkness. No teeth, no tongue, no sign of life. Just a hollow void swallowing the space where a voice should have been. She never moved. She never blinked. She simply waited there, unmoving, her presence a silent demand, a heavy question hanging in the cold night air. Sometimes she would vanish if the friend blinked. Other times she lingered, sitting with that same empty gaze until the pressure pinning the friend's body lifted, allowing them to escape the paralysis. But this ghostly figure was only the beginning. On some nights, the friend's visions grew worse, more horrifying. One night, they awoke to a woman suspended above the bed. Her body was grotesquely bloated and pale, skin peeling and wet, as if she had been underwater for too long. Drops of water clung to her skin, but never fell. They hung like cruel tears refusing to drop. Her eyes were clouded, gray and lifeless, yet they fixed on the friend's face without blinking. The smell of decay seemed to drift from her, a faint, sickly scent like wet earth and rot. She was utterly silent. No words, no moans, just an unbearable stillness. The friend hoped daylight would bring relief, but it did not. Even in the bright sun and the noisy world, the visions followed. Walking to school or simply crossing the street, impossible figures would appear out of nowhere. Once, a man crawled on all fours down the sidewalk. His clothes were soaked in blood. Half of his skull was missing, exposing something so ghastly that describing it felt like invading some sacred horror. His fingers scraped desperately at the pavement, as if clawing toward some distant goal only he could understand. At other times, it was a little girl standing silently by a telephone pole. Her dress was stained with dark smudges. A jagged hole split her throat open, raw and unnatural, and when she breathed, the air whistled and wheezed through the wound, making a broken, haunting sound like a dying flute's last note.
These apparitions were everywhere. Sidewalks, alleys, the edges of schoolyards. Different faces, different tragedies, but all with the same vacant, lost expression. None of them ever attacked. None spoke. None tried to reach out. The friend's terror slowly morphed into something else. Fear is raw and sharp at first, but living in constant fear dulls it, grinding it down until it becomes a tired kind of sorrow. They stopped flinching, stopped gasping. Instead, they began to see the spirits as pitiful, trapped souls caught in moments they couldn't understand. Perhaps, the friend thought, they didn't even know they were dead. Maybe they were doomed to wander, replaying the fragments of their last moments on an endless loop. One haunting image burned itself into the friend's memory. Along the route to school stood a row of old concrete buildings. Every morning, without fail, at exactly 7:16 a.m., a woman would fall from the rooftop of one building. The fall was always the same. She dropped soundlessly, twisting slightly in the wind, her hair whipped upward, her face pale and blank. She never screamed, never reached out. She just fell, as though gravity was pulling her not only downward but backward through time, forcing her to relive the moment again and again. And then, just before hitting the ground, the scene would vanish, reset, like a cruel loop stuck on repeat. For months, the friend only caught glimpses, usually passing the spot just before or after the fall. But one morning, everything changed. They were riding the bus to school, sitting by the window. As the bus slowed near the familiar rooftop, the woman began to fall. This time, the moment stretched. The friend saw every detail. The way her eyes stayed fixed forward, her limp hands hanging at her sides, the wind catching her hair. And then, just before she reached the pavement, her head turned, ever so slightly. Her eyes met theirs. It was less than a second, but in that second, something shifted. The friend described it as an awkward pang, like being caught staring at a stranger in a place you shouldn't be. It wasn't fear, it was recognition. Then, she was gone. No sound, no trace. The bus moved on. The day continued, but the friend carried that moment with them, heavy and unshakable. As the years passed and high school neared its end, the visions began to fade. Not suddenly, not like a switch flipping off, but slowly, like colors washing out of an old photograph. One day, walking home, the friend realized, "I haven't seen any ghosts lately." That simple thought left a hollow ache. The fear was gone, but so was the strange, painful familiarity. For years, the ghosts had been a constant, terrifying presence. Now it was as if that door had closed. Decades later, the friend hasn't seen a single spirit. Life returned to ordinary. Yet sometimes, in moments of quiet, they think of her, the woman on the rooftop, still falling, still trapped in that endless loop. The friend once asked, almost quietly, "Is that what they call an exorcism? If there are people who can do that, I wish someone would help her. Being slammed into the ground again and again, that's too pitiful." What haunts them now isn't fear of the supernatural, it's helplessness, knowing that some tragedies may never end. And so the uploader leaves the story here. A question heavy on the chest. What happens to those trapped in the last moments of their lives? Do they even know they're gone? If there are those who can set them free, why are so many still falling? This is a story not about ghosts that scare us in the dark. It's about the quiet sorrow of souls stuck between worlds and the unbearable weight of knowing that sometimes there's nothing we can do.